Welcome to SHI's Research Breakdown. In this episode, we're discussing the 2025 Cost of a Data Breach report from the Ponemon Institute, supported by IBM, which we included in the August the 8th edition of the Research Roundup LinkedIn newsletter. So, starting with some positive news, the report highlights that global data breach costs have actually declined for the first time in 5 years, down to $4.4 million US, and this is primarily due to fast breach containment driven by AI-powered defences. However, at the same time, 16% of breaches involved attackers using AI. Still on the theme of AI, with 97% of AI-related breaches involving AI systems without proper access controls, it's clear that AI adoption is outpacing oversight. I'm Victoria Barber. I head up the Strategic Insights function here at SHI. And once again, I've invited my colleagues, field CISOs, Brad Bowers and Rob Forbes, to discuss what the research tells us about how AI is reshaping both attack methods and defense strategies, and to bring some of their expertise and experience to the conversation. Welcome, Brad and Rob.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
So, Rob, when you initially reviewed this report, what were your first impressions of it?
So it was an interesting take on the reports that we've been seeing lately. There was a very big focus on the what happened versus the why and how. So the details and the data that, it was, hey, so-and-so was breached and it cost them this much, but not really a lot of digging down into the details and the data that some of the other reports out there that we tend to see in the industry. One of the observations I know Brad made was about how did they use AI to do this? And I'll let Brad dig into a little bit of that.
Well, from my perspective, these reports are fantastically valuable. And this one in particular, it kind of came out at a very good time. And let me explain. So when you think about most of these reports, they tend to be almost like a hygiene test for us. They tell us a little bit about how the plans that we've done, whether it be maybe our exercise plan or our eating better plan, how we've actually been successful in doing it over the course of the year. And in this report, we get a really good sense of just where we are. What's the hygiene of data breaches? Where is the industry going? The timing is good, in my opinion, because right now is when all of us, we're being asked by organizations, hey, we're looking at 2026 and beyond. Where should we be focusing our time? And I think the report really helps emphasize some of those key areas and things that we should be looking at.
So we mentioned when we started that 16% of the breaches involved attackers using AI, that 97% of those AI-related breaches didn't have proper access controls. And then there's also the figure that 20% of these breaches are tied to shadow AI. Some of this sounds rather familiar with other technologies and other tech innovations that we've had in the past with shadow IT of various kinds. So should we not have learnt some of these lessons already?
I think what we're seeing is the fact that the industry is still immature in this area. AI is changing so rapidly, and it's both defense and how it's being leveraged by threat actors is evolving so fast that it's hard for them to keep up. It's clearly a challenge. I mean, the data really shows us that there's a challenge across the board for organizations to be able to put in defensive tactics around AI and at the same time embrace the capabilities of AI to support their business and what they're trying to do from a day-to-day perspective.
Yeah. So Rob, is this kind of AI arms race? Is this keeping the cybersecurity industry in business as long as the attackers keep coming up with new things? You and Brad are going to be okay with the job for a while?
I think so. We're seeing the same consistent push that we see everywhere. It's an arms race. AI is a sword and a shield. The attackers are going to leverage it. We're going to leverage it. But it's similar to the blog post SHI and Stratascale recently put out. Are we running so fast we forgot our pants? This is business. Once again, I'm out the door. I've got my wallet. I've got my keys. I'm ready for my meeting. oh, we forgot to apply cybersecurity to all this. We want to get the advantage of it. We want to leverage it. We want to use it, but we show up at the meeting without our pants. And that's what we're doing here. We're repeating the same mistakes the past. Business has not learned, and they're pushing security to keep up with, hey, I want agentic AI. Of course, everybody's trying to roll that out, but we've still not built that maturity in to leverage cybersecurity as part of those cycles. So that's biting organizations, and it's a shame to see that we're repeating those same mistakes that we've always done. Every new technology is hot. Everybody wants to get it. All the boards are going, we've got to have it to stay competitive with the clients. But then we forget this little piece called cybersecurity.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about the fact that the good news in here is that the global data breach costs have actually declined for the first time in 5 years. Sadly for our audience, I believe the majority of them are likely to be in the US. It's not actually good news for them after all, is it? It looks like their costs are going up, passing the $10 million mark for the average breach.
Yeah, they don't say it in the report directly, but you can extrapolate and infer from kind of what it's showing that the US approach is different than what is done in other countries. And to put some context around that, how many of us have worked with a US organization where they say, we're going to wait and see what this regulatory piece, does it have teeth? And what do those teeth look like? What is the impact if we don't follow this regulation to the T? They're not doing that because they want or they're worried about lacking cybersecurity. They're doing it because it's a business decision. They're looking at what is the cost of implementing all these tools versus the potential impact from the regulatory from a fines perspective. And what the report shows is that the fines and the expectation in the EU and some other countries, things like GDPR, DORA, and how that's being done, the level of expectation there and the financial impact is dramatically higher. In the US, the fines are very steep, but they're actually considerably less than it is in other places. And I think that's part of the driver that we're seeing.
Some of it, I think, goes back to the history that we have. We talked about that. Do I do a recall or do I, suffer the lawsuits? Which one's going to be cheaper? These organizations have made these decisions. We've continued to make those style of decisions. Do I keep my disaster recovery and backup, with, an Iron Mountain or somebody like that? Or is it worth me just to hedge it and go, no, I'm not going to pay that $2 million a year. I'll risk it until there is that outage I have to do. We always make these business decisions. So dollars drive it. We are seeing in the healthcare space, we know the cost per record in healthcare is higher. Why? Because the HIPAA requirements and the federal government fines associated with healthcare records is greater than inside other areas. So they are getting these fines that have the teeth and they are paying the higher amounts when it comes to it. So they're making that change.
Now, one of the things that I found interesting in here was this point about who pays ransoms and who doesn't. So 63% of organizations refuse to pay ransoms. How would you make a decision about whether you pay a ransom or not? Who can refuse to pay a ransom? Who can't? Because we know that, most governments will say, don't pay the ransoms because that just encourages them. They'll come back for more, bit like blackmailers, because that's effectively what it is, isn't it? So we know that we're seeing an increase in ransom demands. We know that maybe they're asking for less, but there is more of it, like with a lot of this. What's happening here?
So I think a big part of this is the fact that it comes down to a business decision. There is confidence that they're going to be able to get their data back, and it's cheaper to do so. Some companies will make that business decision to pay the ransom because they believe they'll be able to do it, return and restore themselves to an active business state, and then clean up and mitigate the risk afterwards. As you said, law enforcement will tell you, don't do it because all you're doing is propagating the problem. But I think it's that business decision in part that's driving it. Here's the other element that has shown up in many reports, and we hear about it from organizations that have experienced an incident, and that is the support level that they get from the ransomwares from the standpoint of standing up accounts, helping them understand and to move things around with Bitcoin. It's amazing. It's a premier level of service that they're getting from these ransomwares. So that in part, I think, is also driving it. Obviously, whenever we're working with orgs, it's always, hey, you make that decision. It's a business decision. But of course, the standing ground is don't pay unless you have to.
I think we're seeing a little bit of shift. A lot of the federal and state and local governments are now saying we're not allowed to pay ransomware. We can't pay it. So we're seeing that shift. But we're also seeing some boards and other organizations at the board level saying we will not pay it. We will see some of them pay almost to kind of sweep it under the rug. We'll just pay it. We won't, if they're not required by law to announce it. So if it's a private organization, not a public organization, we're going to pay it. We're going to hope it doesn't echo out and leak out so that their impact to their organization from a broader brand standpoint is less. Can I just get this taken care of? To us, it's not a big amount. Now, the interesting part is there's actually a network of who has paid and who hasn't paid. So then once I've been breached and I paid pretty quickly and easily, now another org's going to come in and go right on the heels. We've seen this a couple times. I just got breached and then 2 weeks later got breached again, maybe even on the same level.
So we've seen that there is a significant lack of AI governance policies. What else do we need to be looking at to think about solving this problem from the people and process side, not just relying on the technology and hoping that the tools will magically solve everything for us?
To me, this goes back to that part of focus. We see the industry on the endpoint side, on the networking side, on the governance, risk, and compliance part of the equation. They're all moving in their own direction at a very, very fast pace. Some groups are pulling together and doing a common framework, a common voice around how they want to talk about and what the expectations are. I think we need that. It's clearly required in AI, and I think it's starting to happen. We see the CrowdStrikes of the world and the Palo Altos and the Ciscos coming together, building common taxonomy for what languages should be used and what they're going to call a risk and at what level. That needs to be propagated through our governance around AI, our governance around our processes, and every other technology that we use. It's happened in pockets, but the need for it to happen holistically is still there. And I think we're moving in that direction. It's just going to take us some time to get there.
I think that's spot on. I think there's also a matter of organizations at the board level and having security people, cybersecurity expertise at the board level. We're starting to see that shift, but it's not there yet. A lot of times you'll see the CIO on the board level, but the CIO is different than the CISO, CISO. Those are different roles, different understandings of the industry, different understandings of the requirements for that. So the need for the boards to understand and to be able to push down business level changes. When things come from the board level, businesses change. Who owns it? Whose head's going to be on the platter? A lot of times it's not somebody, it's not the CEO, it's not the CFO, it's not even the CIO. It's the CISO that when something happens, he's the one that's served up, but his voice is a layer or 2 or 3 layers sometimes from that board level. It gets filtered, it maybe gets mismessaged. So that education at that executive level of cybersecurity, we all get it's important, but the voice is filtered through layers of sediment as it goes upwards.
So the biggest takeaways that I have from this then is that AI is both a weapon and a shield, that regulation is what is driving and reshaping US costs in terms of both the cost of the breach and the cost of doing the job, and that governance gaps remain eternally critical. Those are probably the biggest takeaways that I have from this. What are your final thoughts for CISOs and boards on moving from reactive spending to proactive strategy? Rob, if you want to go first on this one.
It's definitely the engagement of the cybersecurity organization at that board level, at that executive level is one of the things that we're seeing. It is part of the burnout of the CISOs. It is part of the gripes when I talk to clients on a regular basis is they don't hear me, or it gets filtered, or I tell them this or I tell them that. So that engagement from the executive level down, that bringing a voice to the table that has the experience, the been there, done that, got the t-shirt person versus the let me ask the person who asked the person who asked the person and give me a report that summarizes it and it goes up. That needs to be critical. That needs to be heard, because I think that's one of the biggest dropouts when I'm talking to the clients is they go, yeah, I'm one who's going to get in trouble when we are breached, but I don't even have a voice up here. It's my responsibility. It's my reliability. I'm the one that's getting the pink slip. I'm stepping away from this. I literally hear regularly from people that, I'm getting out. Why? Oh, because I don't have a voice.
So I'll go back to where we started, and that this report is kind of like our annual health check. It gives us a really good understanding of where we've been effective over the years, how things have changed over the last 12 months, where the industry is growing, and it illustrates where our time, energy, and money has been effective. And I think it tells us where we need to be spending more time. Clearly, the cloud side of this, clearly the AI side of this, clearly the governance are all going to be hot items going into 2026. I think the report gives us some ideas of where to focus our time and where we need to push a little harder.
Thank you both very much for your time. It's been a really insightful conversation and hopefully some great things for our audience to think about.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Victoria. Always a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us for today's research breakdown discussion. We hope you enjoyed it and that you'll join us again next time. Until then, for more insights into the research we're reading, sign up for our Research Roundup newsletter on SHI's LinkedIn page. SHI Media. You heard it here.